Good day. So today we're working inside the truck. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on installing our Kenwood KMM Bluetooth radio back inside the truck. When I sold the Explorer, I took the radio out of this. It was an older Kenworth, one of the ones that had the pull handle, you know. We're going to be installing our Kenwood KMM Bluetooth radio inside the middle of the truck. Here we go. Now, you don't need to overcomplicate this, fellers. Really, when you're installing radios, like this one, for example, because it's a 96 cab and I grafted on the 80s dash, we have the 80s speaker, which does work. But then we also have the side door speakers and the back pillar speakers, which makes 5 speakers total. This isn't rocket science. If you can wire in a coil, you can wire in a radio. Now, you don't have to use radio wires. You don't have to use the special radio wires, the low, I believe it's low oxygen copper. You don't have to use that. Just use your normal 14 gauge, 12 gauge wires. Run them like that. We're not running any amps right now or anything. And plus our speakers, our amp that we'll be putting in eventually is only going to run our 12s, our 12-inch subs. So we don't have to worry about that at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to join these wires back up to our KMM, and we're going to get to it. Okay, so real simple. For these radios right here, you can pretty much forego all of these. These are just speaker wires. So depending on the amount of speakers, directly coincides with how many of these wires you're going to use. The ones on this radio that I'm going to use is the red one on this radio is my accessory wire. It only comes on with my accessory on my column when that's on. Then my yellow is my constant power. This is direct from battery. And then my black one right here is my chassis ground. It can also be a battery ground if you want it to be. There's a lot of other wires on this. Like you have a steering wheel remote input. That would be buttons on your wheel and stuff. I don't have that. We also have a mute button or a mute wire. You could have that on a button, flick it on, it would automatically mute. Also a power antenna. That would be if you have a hidden antenna that retracts when your radio's not on. Hit that button, or have your wiring harness or a power wire or a button or something wired into that remote antenna. Up she goes. Without that hooked on to a power antenna, you won't have it. But on these OBS trucks, pretty much the only ones that you need is ground, power, and accessory. There's also an illuminator wire. There's none on this unit, so I'm not going to go over it with the installation for this. But just so you know, these trucks do have an illuminator wire on them. It basically means when you pull out your lights to turn your lights on, it will dim the brightness of your radio by half. Because I guess if you're running with your lights on, it's dark in the cab. These LEDs are pretty bright. But this radio doesn't have that functionality, so I'm not going to be wired in. So what we're going to start off with doing is we're going to wire in the accessory. The accessory, the constant, and the ground first. Get the radio functioning, and then we're going to add the wires for the speakers to it. And I'll show you guys how to do that. Okay, so for me, it's going to be different for you guys, but I'll post up the right colors for a 1985 F350 model that you can go by. I had to extend my wires forward, so the colors aren't going to match you guys. But I already had them previously marked. This is my constant power right here, my black wire. So this is always hot, as you can see. See, I think nope, there we go. Yeah, always hot. Then, sorry not to slide that one off here. This is my accessory wire. It's only powered on with accessory. And then back here is my illuminator wire. As I said, it's in the harness on these 80s trucks, also on the 90s trucks, but the radio I have just doesn't support it. And then So I have constant, my accessory, and my illuminator. Now, a couple things there. Make sure you guys, there's a ground right in here. It goes off onto the body. When you take that off, if you're going to use a dash ground, make sure that your steel is clean, or else you might not have a good ground. So, got a wire brush in here. All what I'm going to do is simply clean that off, and we'll be good for our ground. So, it's awful nice when you have a wiring diagram to go by, but what happens if you have an old car that you want to add a wiring, that you want to add a newer radio to the existing wiring that's in it? What happens if you don't have a diagram to go off of? Well, there's a couple ways you can do it. Here we're going to use back probing. Back probing with a test light grounded to the body. And what you're going to do is with the key off, but the battery connected, you're going to probe your wires. See, it lights up already right there, because this is my constant. I already knew that, but I'm just going to go through this, guys, with you, just in case you ever have a scenario like this. I had to do this when I first merged my 96 harness and my 80s harness together. So we found our constant power. Now, what we want to try to find is our accessory power. So, with the battery connected, flick your ignition to accessory, and you're going to do the exact same thing. You're going to back probe and try to find it. Now, that's our constant power. We should always have power on that. Don't worry about him. Now, we're looking for accessory power. There's our accessory power right there. As you can see, the other ones are. And it should be the one that has the A, correct. Okay, and as for the illuminator, I'm going to show you guys what that is. So, roll your ignition to the start position. Fuel pump and all that good stuff's going to come on. Don't worry about that too much. So what you're going to do, pull your lights all the way out. So, your illuminator is a wire that's only powered when your headlights are on. And that is my brown wire right here, as you can see. Now we also have our ignition, or our accessory, and our constant. Those are still on. But that's what you'll do to find your wires, and that's going to give you your accessory, your constant, and your illuminator. You can add your own ground. It's not a big deal. Alright, so we got the radio all wired in, so it should come on. But right now, no matter what I do, here, I'm going to poke it in here. Right now, no matter what I do to it, it should not come on. It shouldn't come on. So power button, etc., etc., it shouldn't come on because my key's off. Now, if I rotate to this to accessory, we should see the radio come on. There it goes. It's on standby right now because it doesn't have its antenna hooked on. Now, when I turn the key, it should shut off because it doesn't have power anymore. When I roll the key forward to the start position, it should either come on or I just have to manually press it. We'll see in a second. So this is at run. This is where your truck will normally sit. And as you can see, it turns on. So the actual core bit to the radio, that's done. Now all what we have to do is wire in our speakers. Now, I'm going to wire in the speakers off camera, simply because my wiring on this, I added the speakers myself, so the wire colors aren't going to match to what you need, to what you want. But what I will do is I'll put a wiring diagram for an 85 F350 somewhere on the screen at this point, and you guys can coincide that with this. I'm going to put the Kenwood wiring diagram and the 85 wiring diagram together. All what you're going to do is basically match left front with left front, right front with right front, etc., etc. Most likely on the 85 truck stock, you're either running two door speakers, left and right side, two door speakers left and right side, plus the center console speaker, the single speaker, or you're running a conjunction of all three. So as for the center console speaker on the 1985 series trucks, on this radio, it has 4 speakers. On this truck, my 2 back column, my 2 door column, but I have 5. So what I can do, and what you can do, is you can wire in your top speaker with one of your front speakers. Don't wire it in with the back, because when you get surround sound, it's going to get really confused. It will work fine, but it's not going to sound right. So keep the fronts to the fronts, keep the backs to the backs. A cleaner way to install it would be run the extra speakers off an amplifier, but for one single 6x9 up inside the dash, it's not going to hurt the deck. So I'm going to wire those in, and I'm going to show you guys the finished product as for wiring, and then we're going to install the bezels and finish up this. Alright, so now we have the radio all wired in, which is pretty good. Let's turn it on. Accessory is on. Our radio should come alive. There we go. Play a couple clips on the radio, just enough that I don't get monetized. As you can see. Go down. We got radio. It's on all speakers. If I turn off my accessory, put it back to the rest position, radio is off. Let's turn it to run. Should illuminate and we should be okay. Radio. And there we go. So we got radio on all. Everything's good there. So what we're going to do is we're going to button up the brackets and put it all together. Alrighty. So now I actually got you guys in the bed of the truck going through the sliding window. So now what we're going to do is we're going to merge our bezel and our bracket. Now since we hardwired the radio on, we have to feed them through this before we join these together. So we're going to slide our bezel first, and then we're going to slide our piece over our radio. Alright, so now that we got that all sorted out, we should be able to listen to our radio. That's accessory. We'll switch it over to accessory. Kenwood. Radio. And there we go. One radio installed. There. Now, I know what you're going to say there, fellers. That radio is going to wobble all over the place because it's just mounted to the plastic. Now, I've been running radios like that now in my blue truck, my 1985 F250, my 6.9 diesel. I also had it like that in my 1994 Ford Explorer. I've never had one wobble out. If we do have one wobble out, I'll make a follow-up video and we'll address that. We'll either make a mounting piece to go on that 4 bolts at the back, or we'll rig up something to hold it in. But I'll see you guys on the next video.